So in this video, we're going to look at digital marketing and in particular the trends in digital marketing. So by the end of this video, you should be able to understand the dynamic nature of digital marketing. And this is important at this time more than ever, I think, because the impact of coronavirus around the world has been to increase the pace of change towards digital marketing. As people are trapped in their home, they're making more and more use of digital means, both to hear about products and to shop for products. So by the end of this video, you should be able to describe and explain some of the current trends in digital marketing. And we're going to learn about these by just looking at some recent research that has been undertaken by organizations such as Mintel and Statista and others. So let's start with a quote from Mintel. And this was taken from a survey that was done in December 2020. And Mintel have said that companies need to take advantage of this time when people are shopping more on their smartphones from home. Companies should be refining their mobile commerce offerings to fit with their target markets. Younger people who are mobile natives, in other words, they've grown up with using their mobile phones to shop and do many other things. So younger mobile natives will respond to features that integrate seamlessly with their everyday social activities. For example, convenient checkout options and engaging augmented reality experiences. And there is growing use of digital wallets for smartphone payments. And this can be a platform to target older demographics of consumers. So this underlines this idea that we're all at home more, we're all shopping from home more, and that actually mobile is becoming a really important medium for particularly younger consumers, and this idea of smartphone payments for all demographics, but in particular it's a change for us older demographics. So let's have a look at some of the research that's been done. Let's start with this one. This is where Statista asked consumers how they would prefer brands to communicate with them. So this was done in March 2020, and this is broken down by country. And one of the interesting things here is to look at the differences between countries. So, for example, in the UK, the most popular form of communication that people said, this is the way I want brands to communicate with me, most popular form is email. We see that on the orange band at the top there. However, we can contrast that with a country like India, which is third from the bottom, where TV, radio and newspapers were more popular actually than email. But that was still quite high up the line. Facebook in India, indicated by the yellow bar, is really popular way that people want brands to communicate with them. And we can see that recurring, that preference for Facebook, in countries like Brazil and South Africa. So there are differences in different countries. However, the brand's website, which is the green one, though important in some countries, is not the dominant way that consumers want brands to communicate with them. And this is something of a change, I think. In the past, brands felt that if they had a website, that was enough. Well, no more is it enough. The dark blue band here, for example, is Instagram. The sort of brownie red band is streaming videos. So consumers are looking for brands to communicate with them in a variety of ways. Some of those are traditional TV, radio and newspapers, as we can see from the light blue brand. Still fairly traditional email, but lots of other medium as well are becoming more and more important. So email is important, we saw from that last slide, but let's have a look at the effect of those emails as they go out to consumers. So again, this is from Statista, and they found that about 20% of emails that are sent out by brands or businesses actually get opened. Now, that may not sound bad, but what that means is that 80% don't get opened. And that rate has not really changed much during the pandemic at all. How about the average click-through rate? We've all seen those emails where it says click here to have a look at this product or to find out more. How many of us do that? Well, before the pandemic, the average click-through rate was just under 3%. During the pandemic, just over 3%. So that seems to have gone up a little bit. Click-to-open rate seems to have gone up quite a lot. Some of us are unsubscribing, but not many. And then the bounce rate is the rate at which emails come back again. So we see that actually, although consumers say that email is a popular way for brands to communicate, not many of us actually act on those emails. Not many of us click through and buy something as a result of those emails. So what Statista found was that there's an increased reliance on some marketing channels during the COVID-19 pandemic. And this research was carried out in the United States in September 2020. So the number of people who said that they relied on communications with brands in different formats, on different platforms, if you like. So 85% said they found out about brands from their social media posts. Another 65% said they find out about brands through videos, and then blog posts, webcasts, long written content. Influencers, just less than 50% of people said they use those. Podcast, a bit less. But actual advertisements that the businesses create just for their brand that are on a separate platform, only 23% rely on those for their information. So again, we see this indication that the world is changing and that social media and video are becoming more and more important for businesses as a communication channel. So what about influencer marketing? Many of us follow influencers now. And what this information looks at is how much spending is generated by those influencers. And again, this was in the US. This was comparing the first part of 2019 with the first 3 months of 2020. And we can see that in January and February of 2020, more money was spent through influencers, as a result of influencers, than had been the year before. However, this wasn't quite true in March, so it's an uncertain picture in terms of the increasing importance of influencers. But what we can see from this data is that influencers are important. They're not going to go away anytime soon. They're important to spending with brands. So we're looking at some research from Mintel, and this is a kind of summary about what they found relating to digital advertising. And they compared 3 periods of time. They compared the first lockdown in the UK, at least, which was between March and June 2020, with the time over the summer when the economy began to emerge a little bit from lockdown from July onwards. And then they're looking forward to a potential recovery in 2022 to 2025. So what did they find? Well, as far as media are concerned, they found that at the first lockdown, digital media subscriptions and digital media purchases grew significantly. In other words, we all signed up to Netflix if we hadn't done so before. We signed up maybe to Amazon Prime. We did more online shopping, all of those things that are predictable, I suppose. And at the same time, the sales of print media fell quite significantly. In terms of advertising, during this period, digital advertising spend actually declined quite significantly. And that was because of those uncertain economic times and businesses not wanting to spend too much. What's beginning to happen as we emerge from lockdowns and as we hopefully begin to emerge from coronavirus? Well, we expect that expenditure on digital media will slow down again, but some habits will stick. So digital advertising revenue is likely to stabilize, but at that higher level. As for advertising itself, as we emerge from COVID-19, brands will feel more confident in spending again. However, more of that advertising spending is likely to happen online because that trend has been established. So in the more distant future, what is Mintel expecting to happen? Well, they're expecting digital media spend to actually slow down a bit. And the thinking is that people will be able to go out and they'll want to go out and they'll want to shop in person because they can and they haven't done it for a while. And there's likely to be a lack of new content on media services because that slowed down, the creation of new content slowed down during the pandemic. So that revenue is likely to stabilize. Okay, let's move on. So what is the forecast for digital advertising expenditure in the UK? Having said all that we have about growth and then slowdown, we can see that the overall forecast by Mintel is that digital advertising spending by brands will continue to grow at a steady and fairly quick rate over time. So in this slide, Mintel spoke to consumers and asked them, which of these things have you done in the last 3 months? And people could select as many of these as they liked, as they thought applied. And there's some interesting points here. 49% of people said that they had cleared their browsing history in the last 3 months. That's interesting because that browsing history is something that brands want us to keep connected with them. So that's probably not what brands want to hear. However, 38% of us had clicked on an online advert. 33% of us had selected an option to stop seeing a particular advert, and 26% of us had used an ad blocker. Only 20% of us had chosen not to skip a video advert. So there are other things here, but what we're beginning to understand here is that as consumers are becoming more sophisticated in the online world, we're clearing our browsing history, we're using ad blockers, we're choosing what things we want to see, and we're choosing not to see things that we're not interested in. And then how about new technologies like virtual reality? What's happening with that? So we can see that the market forecast for virtual reality and the spending on virtual reality has gone up and down quite a lot, hasn't it? There was a peak of interest in 2017, which fell away rather a lot again in 2018 and picked up again 2019 to 2020. So Mintel thinks that virtual reality spending will continue to grow for the next 4 years or so, but at a fairly slow pace. However, forecasts are just that, they're forecasts. It does depend on how reliable this technology becomes, how cheap it becomes, and how it's applied by businesses, how they feel they're able to use it. And we get a little indication here because this piece of research is all about how many people use virtual reality headsets and how many people are interested in buying them. So the most interesting figure here, I think, is that 56% of people said, no, I don't own one and I wouldn't be interested in buying one. However, I think we need to treat that statistic with some skepticism. There was a time when most people said they didn't understand why they would want a mobile phone. So as technologies improve and become more available, we do often adopt them at a much quicker rate than we might have expected. And this is just one of the emerging technologies that we may all be using quite soon. So our learning objectives here were really to understand some current trends, but more importantly, perhaps, to understand that digital marketing is changing all the time. The development of new technologies is changing at such a pace, we literally do not know what's around the corner. And therefore, businesses have to be very agile at changing, switching to new technologies. And they have to be very well informed about what technologies are out there and what people think about them and how much consumers are likely to engage with those different technologies. Okay, we're going to end there. There are a few questions now for you to answer.